If you're active in queer communities online, you've probably witnessed this situation. You're gay or trans or bi or ace, and you've noticed something troubling. People who claim to be part of your community, but whose identities, experiences, or needs are vastly different than your own. And I'm here to talk about that. But first, a story. When I first found genderqueer, it felt like coming home, like discovering home, like the first time you go to Pride when you're surrounded by rainbows and cheering. I was 21 and I desperately needed answers. What was I? What was going on? Why did I feel this way? The ever-present specter of imposter syndrome just whispered, "Am I making this up?" I found genderqueer and I felt a relief. I wasn't making it up. There were other people like me. I didn't have to be a butch lesbian or a trans guy. There was a third option. There were other options. There were other ways of being that I hadn't been aware of before. The definition of genderqueer I found in 2012 was someone who is not a man or a woman. Someone whose gender is queer. And that's what I connected with. If you've ever experienced a prolonged, anxious period of questioning, I hope you know the relief I felt when I found genderqueer. I wasn't being frivolous or weird or ridiculous or broken. There were other people like me. I had a place. The more time I spent online, searching through posts and communities, the more uneasy I became. I'm used to selfies with a million tangentially related tags, but flipping through pictures tagged genderqueer but also lesbian, gay girl, and tomboy made my stomach begin to churn. I dug deeper, and I found that there were people using genderqueer, my word, to mean people who experience their gender in a queer way, or even people whose gender expression is queer. I was gutted, betrayed. I thought I found my community, but it had been taken from me. What if I came out to someone as genderqueer, and they still didn't understand me? Instead of giving up and finding a new word, I doubled down. I'm stubborn like that. I searched for an authority, some objective source that would be able to prove that I was right and their definition was wrong. Eventually, I found a book published 17 years ago, one of the first times genderqueer was used in print. Genderqueer, Voices from Beyond the Sexual Binary, published in 2002. And I found out that I was wrong. Genderqueer had never been so narrow and specific as I wanted it to be. The Invaders had been there all along. They were no less part of the community than I was. The problem, I discovered, was my own. The problem I was having wasn't that someone had come in and stolen something that was mine. The problem was that my desire to be validated by my community manifested in a need for my story to be the default. What I wanted deeply was for a word that needed no explanation. I wanted to be able to say I'm genderqueer and have people understand implicitly my identity, my needs, my pronouns, my preferred terms of address. Having left behind cis privilege, I deeply wanted some of that back. Think about it. In general, cisgender people don't need to explain their pronouns. They don't need to define their identity for strangers, and they don't need to come out as cis to avoid being misgendered. I want that back. Hell, I still do. I'm not alone in that desire, and I don't think it's necessarily wrong. It's a very natural thing for a person to want. But the way that I was demanding that other genderqueer people adhere to my own expectations and identity was, well, it was stupid and mean. If I ask you to imagine a genderqueer character right now, you probably think of someone a lot like me anyway. But we're not all like me. There are AMAP genderqueers, and femme genderqueers, and fat genderqueers, and disabled genderqueers, and yes, cis genderqueers, and they're no less genderqueer than me. They have nothing to prove. They are as valid and as real and as normal a genderqueer as I am. They aren't variations on my design. They aren't the cherry coke to my classic cola. We are all on a level playing field. The more that I work through this, the more I think that even having a default narrative is the source of the problem. Yes, words exist to tell us things, and if they had no definition at all, it would be very difficult for us to communicate, but I feel like online queer communities put too much emphasis on definitions and not enough on stories. No one tries to define what cis womanhood feels like. We accept that there are thousands of ways to experience it. And I want that for genderqueers and for trans people and for lesbians and bisexuals and asexuals and intersex people. We should have just as much freedom as they have. And we shouldn't hold ourselves to different standards. We don't have to be the same to have things in common. And even if we don't have the same needs, we can still work together to make sure that everyone's life improves. And that's actually pretty awesome. If Jonathan Van Ness from Queer Eye is going to make people more accepting of people having different gender expressions, then that's a benefit to me. It doesn't matter that he uses he, him pronouns. We're on the same team. I have a lot in common with other genderqueers, but not everything. And that's why I love that my generation and the generation that came after are busy coining a million micro-labels that satisfy that urge I have to have a box that fits snugly. I don't understand all of them, and I sure as hell don't know all of them, but that's not what they're for. They're meant to describe the complex, subtle ways that orientation, gender, and other aspects of our experience interact and express themselves, and I think they're succeeding. So basically, be nice to demisexuals. They're queer too.